This is supposed to be Britain's premier transport system, but it's one of the most unreliable in the world. Tonight, we expose some of those responsible. The gangs who skive, undertrained, undersupervised, dangerous, the waste, the malpractice, and the sleeping on the job. Because this is the public's money that you're wasting. That's what they'll be upset about. We're all paying for this. And why should you care? Because it is your money. Whether you live in London or Londonderry, Stirling or Swansea, soon you'll be paying £35 a year to help maintain the tube.
Quite shocked, really, considering I live in Devon.
Outraged, I think, would be the right answer, because I think it's not a thing that we would gain any benefit from.
I think it's a bit of a cheek. They should pay it up there, not here.
Now you know why it's so expensive for tickets.
But whilst our money's being wasted, some private companies are about to make a fortune, going underground on the gravy train. It carries 3 million people every day. That's more than the entire population of Wales. But it's got a problem. It's the most retro metro in the world. There are carriages from when Churchill was around, signal boxes from the Second World War, stations and tunnels from the Edwardians. The result? It requires constant maintenance. Whilst you prepare to sleep, these people prepare to go underground. They do track work. They have to work at night. There's just a 4 to 5 hour window when the trains have stopped running and the power's off. They're the maintenance gangs, and there's about 500 of them. So when we arrive at the underground in the morning, the work's done and the tubes are safe and efficient again. Or are they? We spent 5 weeks undercover with the maintenance teams to find out what really goes on. One of our gang got a job with a subcontractor doing track maintenance. The gangs work in difficult and dangerous conditions, but he was given just 2 hours training by London Underground and was considered ready to start. They call it going down the hole. He had to use a night vision secret camera. Now, new boys are nicknamed new skins, and our new skin was placed in a gang. And here it is. This is Sleepy John. Then there's Neil. And there's Gord. And Sid. And another John. John Paul Jones, the foreman, known as the Gaffer. You're going to see a lot of him. At the start of the night shift, John the Gaffer comes up with a plan for avoiding the bosses who dish out the work.
Keep low profile and don't get seen. That's the master plan.
The next station is Holborn.
Now, the first job was beneath this tube station, Holborn, in central London, and it was to dig 2 small holes the size of shoeboxes. Our new skins down the hole and ready for work, but they tell him to take a stroll. And in a tunnel between Holborn and Covent Garden, out of the darkness looms another gang, and they've got some advice for him too.
What we're supposed to be doing then?
This man can't do this thing.
You know, I've been on about a week.
Oh, you get used to it.
What's that? Not doing much.
Whilst he was learning the work ethic, the rest of the gang dug those 2 small holes. That was a whole night's work. But how many men did it take?
22 men. For 2 holes.
They get paid for a whole night shift, all 22 of them. It's just the start of a job to remove a sleeper. That should take about 8 men a night shift. But for tonight, they're off. There's John the Gaffer at the front, leading his men to street level and home. So far, the work's taken
176 man-hours.
and the sleeper job's hardly begun. Their work rate doesn't surprise this insider. He's afraid he'd lose his job for talking to us, so we've hidden his identity. But he's worked on the underground for a decade, and he's seen the effect of subcontracting work to private companies.
I've had colleagues of mine who are always complaining about that when they're working on nights, that there's contractors who are not doing nothing. They're just not interested in the job. For people that are just coming off the street and being offered a pay, but they don't have the training, they don't want to work there, it's just a job to them.
If the skills and the work ethic are absent, we should all be worried, and not just for safety reasons. The capital and its financial institutions need the tube to be efficient. If it isn't, the impact is felt from the Scottish Highlands to the Sussex Downs. If the tube closed for a day, the economy would lose an estimated £10 million.
London is the engine of growth for the whole British economy. So what happens in London affects everybody, and the tube is a very important thing, not just in terms of the people commuting to work every day, but tourists, visitors and so on. So it's vitally important for the whole British economy.
That's why the work should all be this well planned and this well executed. But it's not. That's partly due to the vast and creaking bureaucracy of the London Underground. It's as much in need of updating as the network it manages. But it's also because the gangs we've secretly filmed don't work like this.
It's like a military operation. It has to be done in a very short time frame. And also you have to have staff who are well equipped and prepared to work in the middle of the night.
So let's see if they use some of that military efficiency on the sleeper job. Gaffer John and the lads don't look exactly ready for action. Tonight they should be removing that sleeper. It's part 2 of the job they started a couple of nights ago. But to gain access to the track, a supervisor needs to phone through a code, something called a Sabre number. And there's a problem. Their code's apparently out of date.
It's not valid.
The official on the other end of the line offers a new one. Great, they'll soon be ready for work. But curiously, they refuse to accept it. They seem to think it's funny, wasting our money. And again, it's not just our gang of 6. 22 men were involved and never even got onto the tracks. And off they go, home again.
We still get paid though, yeah?
And so too will the subcontractor who employs them. So far, this simple job has taken
352 man-hours.
Now, the way the tubes run and finance is about to change. We're entering a brave new world where we expect shiny new carriages, smoother, faster journeys, immaculate stations, no more delays. A world, perhaps, where maintenance gangs will work with military efficiency. All that through something called the PPP, a public-private partnership. Sounds grey, technical, something you'd plead not to have to know about, but you must. Huge private companies will run the maintenance and renewal on the Underground. The way it'll work is set out in contracts, but if I try to explain them, I'll be here until after the 10 o'clock news, sometime next year. They go on for 2 million words. In fact, they're so complex, just getting them agreed has already cost us £400 million.
£400 million is an extraordinary amount of money to have wasted on just drawing up a scheme. It would have bought, for example, a whole set of 100 new trains for the Northern Line and also paid for the maintenance for 20 years. So that's the sort of money that's just been wasted in drawing up this scheme.
But the private companies themselves are expected to make huge profits. They'll be based on complex mathematical equations that even a beautiful mind would find hard to fathom. They calculate a bewildering series of bonuses to be paid for improvements. This one determines how much they'll get for what's called station and train ambience. Well, said they were complicated. TMS equals sigma subscript J brackets QATAS subscript J times W superscript T subscript J divided by sigma subscript J times... Come on, haven't you worked it out yet? Prize for anybody who has.
It's almost a kind of a plot to stop them understanding because it's so complicated that nobody could ever possibly understand the detail of it.
And you?
I just about understand it, but I wouldn't like to go on mastermind about it.
Neither would this man. He used to run London Underground. In his time, it was almost self-financing. In other words, it didn't need much taxpayers' money. But under the new system, it will.
We are now talking about a situation where there is going to be a subsidy potentially of £1 billion a year.
How much?
£1 billion a year. So, I mean, the cost of this thing is massive. The waste of public money is huge.
The government disagrees. It says that money will allow long-term investment at an unprecedented level, and that the private companies will only get paid according to performance. Now, if they're spending all this money, and remember, a lot of it's ours, you'd think they'd have to improve things. I mean, that's the whole point of this, isn't it? But no, they can actually allow performance to drop and still get their bonuses. That's right, there are cash incentives to improve performance, but the contracts don't oblige them to. Delays and journey times could worsen, and still the private companies would get bonuses. In fact, performance could fall by about 5%.
That's one of the amazing parts of the contract. If you look at the detail of the contract, they are very favourable to the contractors and not very favourable to London Underground and us, the taxpayers.
Still haven't fixed that sleeper. It's the third night on the job and the signs aren't promising. More half-hearted phone calls to get access to the track, and there seems to be some confusion between the gang and a London Underground official at the end of the phone. The gang adopts its customary position, at ease. And again, access is denied.
We'll have to go somewhere else or can we go home? Go home, yeah?
It does all come down to the planning of the work. I mean, very often you'll find on these occasions that because the work hasn't been well planned, or there's some key materials or some key individual doesn't turn up, then they actually can't do the job, and that's when they do have a complete waste of time and money, public money. So,
But what do you think passengers would think of this? I mean, a significant part of your ticket cost
absolutely
goes into these people.
Well, it just shows that the ticket price could be a lot lower if this sort of waste was avoided.
Apparently, about a third of the price of your ticket goes on track maintenance.
Let's go before they change their mind again.
The job should take 60 man-hours. So far, it's taken
464 man-hours.
Our gang is employed by a company called Sky Blue. It's a major supplier of tube maintenance labour, and it's doing well. A £9 million turnover last year for this kind of work. So its website is in buoyant spirits. It says, our innovative techniques, excellent training and daily safety briefings are setting new standards. New standards like the ones you're about to see, perhaps. The sleeper job is on hold. Our gang has been given something else to do instead. They're replacing one of these. It's an insulator called a pot. There are thousands of them on the tubes, so this should be a routine task. They have to move the power line and then reset it using a special tool. If it's not put back properly, you'll get a bumpy ride. They're supposed to know what they're doing. Fortunately for users of the Northern Line, someone finally comes along who does know what to do. But that might not always be the case. We've uncovered evidence of an astonishing incident when a contractor was replacing rail at the busy Baker Street junction last Easter. A company called Amec Rail was overseeing the job. It fell behind schedule, so they tried to take a shortcut, literally.
There was an overrun, and cutting it short, they ended up trying to place straight sections of rail around a curve.